So there are loads of choices these days for people wanting to record their guitar, but they tend to fall into one of two camps. You either have a recording studio of some description at your disposal, and then you can get creative and you can do all sorts of different things with placements and positions and rooms, or they tend to fall in the camp of digital simulations and emulations, which are very precise, very brilliant, but they tend to sort of rigidly adhere to existing ideas and characteristics. If you're stuck in the middle and you want to get creative and do something different, but you don't have a whole recording studio at your disposal, there's not a whole lot of choice. So making the hotboxes, as I did, the logical next step for me was to make something to record with. And I made this already. So this is the Burn Box. I've sold quite a few of these, generally quite well received. And this is an analog sort of post load box that goes after your main load box, or could be worked with a small amp, and it lets you convert your sound and have a bit of tweakability. So, you know, you can control the size of the cabinet and some mid-range, and you can change the overall sort of tone, the resonance of the speaker. Now, this was all right, but it's not really that creative. I thought, you know, we can do better than this. So I want to make a better one. It's as simple as that. So what's the first step? First step's going back to brass tacks, going back to basics, having a bit of research and seeing what's out there. Now, we're really lucky these days, so we can just go, let me do a little thing, yeah, so we can just go on the internet and find PDFs of people with characteristics. So Eminence are particularly good for publishing their data. So we have this, and they don't just do the description, they'll give you all these parameters. Look at this lot here, magnet materials, and most importantly down here, this little frequency response graph. And like, if you see on this one, you can actually see my little hands. Yeah, you can see this big peak around between 2 and 4K, and that's, you know, not characteristic of all speakers. So you can have a look at something else. Let's see what else we got on here. There's the 10-inch Cannabis Rex. I think this is hilarious. There's a hemp cone speaker, ferrite magnet again, very similar. But look at this, very different frequency response, very flat. We'll go back to the other one, and very peaky. So I gathered all of these together. Makes logical sense to do that, I thought, and put them onto a single sort of graph. So here we go. So this is a selection, it's my sort of selection of what I like the look of. So here we have lots of different overlaid speakers. So we can see on here, like this red one here is a 6 ohm, it's a bit lower down here. And we can pick out characteristics. I'll pick a few out for you guys by deleting some out of the way as we go along. So this blue one, this light blue one here, let's click on that. You can see that frequency drops much sooner. It's got less high end, and if we have a look at the specs, we'll find, oh, that's a 15-inch speaker. What a surprise. So, you know, there's something nice and visible. Let's just clear that out of the way for a second. You know, and we can look at other characteristics on these. Like at the top here, we've got these peaks, this pink, blue, and sort of turquoise all have similar peaks. And when we look at the characteristics of these three, it turns out they've all got big magnets, or in one case, a neodymium magnet. So maybe that's a characteristic. And so we can start drawing a picture of tonally what speakers in general look like. You know, you can see quite a bit of variance, but you can see some patterns going on in there. So now we're going to feel for what a speaker looks like. Look for, you know, what are other people's solutions? What have people done already to sort of address this? And so I'm going to show you a couple of schematics I've looked at. Now, don't worry if you don't understand these. I don't expect anyone to understand these. I'm just going to sort of quickly walk you through them in super easy terms. So we've got like these triangles like miniature amplifiers, little amps. The first amp's just a boost, so we have a boost, and then we have two filters after it, and these are bass cut filters. So basically these are sort of rolling off the bass. So this gives us that first sort of slope, this sort of, where is it, this kind of slope at the side. You can see the slope rising from 20 to 100 hertz. And then the next one's again a little amplifier, and then a couple of other filters that roll off the treble. So that's pretty straightforward. What we've really got there, that's a pretty simple circuit, even though 6 amps in it. And we can look at another one, and it's actually a similar thing. We've got a bit of a boost, we've got a complicated filter, a couple of roll-off filters. So clearly we're drawing this basic diagram of roll off the bass, roll off the treble, and do something extra. But these are linear, right? Okay, so this is a bit of a thing, really. they're linear. They're very, there's no room for overloading or overdriving. There's no chaos in those. They're what I would call, yeah, very linear, clean circuits. They're going to be a clean sound. I think that misses out on a lot of the speaker characteristic. So this, even though it's really simple, someone else's idea. So we could use op amps and clean filters. That's done, works. This used like a bulb to give it a bit of compression. So that's clever. A couple more passive filters this time. You know, those roll off the treble. Then a transformer that's going to roll off the bass as well. So I mean isolation, and that's going to allow a bit of saturation. So, you know, we've got coils in here. And this is another secret. So there's the winding of the bulb and the winding of the transformer give one way of doing things. And then there's this one, another one I came across, a bit more sort of complicated. Well, discrete, I should say. It's discrete, which means it's got transistors in it and things. And you can see the kind of waveform you get out of a nice complicated circuit. It does look roughly like the shapes we were looking at before, but it lacks the complexity of them. So we've got this peak sort of over here, this bass lump peak, so a smooth float, a bass lump peak, a little bit of a mid scoop, and a roll for the treble, and a little bit of complexity around the 10K, which is quite nice. There's a little bit of complexity. You can see the filters doing something there, a bit inductive-alike. So these are all options. These are ways to sort of achieve that. Let's just swap back to it. These are all ways to achieve this kind of shape, you know, that we've got going on here. But another problem with a lot of those circuits is they're not very variable. Every single one we just looked at was designed to be a speaker simulator, and I wanted us to get creative, okay? So we've got a feel for it. We've got a few ideas how circuits work. We've got a few ideas of what speakers really look like in the real. Actually, I've got a lot more than this on the computer. I just don't want to bore you. So the next sort of step for me is to move away from the research and say, okay, let's get some beginnings of a design idea. Let's start with a design idea. And this is, I always think this is a double-edged thing. You can't separate appearance and functionality, because the appearance defines the limits of the functionality. Like if a box is a certain size, you can only have so many controls. But then the functionality also defines the appearance, because if the functionality has 4 controls, then the appearance is going to look a certain way. So I've always felt we should try and do these two things sort of at the same time, really. So here we go. Swapping over to a sketch. This is sort of 3rd or 4th sketch in. I'm thinking about how we want to do this. And a design thing I've learned over time is that, you know, end users don't want to have to learn to be electronic engineers. You know, the idea is to take that away and give you guys terms and concepts that make sense, that you can work with, so you can be creative. So they'll do clever stuff, but in a way that makes sense. So I've chucked these labels on at the moment because to me these kind of make sense. The more speakers you have, the more expansive your low end is. And then we've got some kind of resonance control to tune that. And then the size of your speaker, it can affect your low end, but more than that, it affects your high end. So, you know, like we showed in the diagram, the 15-inch had this severe roll off going on, but actually I'm going to pop back to the second. Can I undo? So if we look at this red curve I've got highlighted, and we look at the roll off of the bass there, apart from being quieter, if we were to turn the volume up on that, let's move up, the bass roll off's pretty much the same as the 15. Wow, okay. So actually there's not really less bass per se, it's just sort of quieter bass. So this is very common, whereas it's clearly this blue roll off is very different. So yeah, we come up with these ideas of control. So this happens at one and the same time as designing the circuit. You know, or like on the right here, before I move away from this, I've got 5 jacks. I know I can fit 5 jacks. I may change what they do, but I know if I want 6, it's going to get messy. So the artistic side of it sets up limitations for our circuit. So let me see if I can move over to circuitry now. And sort of, here we go. Ta-da! This is a crude circuit. This was me doodling. So I'm using some simulation software to do some simulations. Now, as I've said, the circuit is actually similar to the one in this. It's very similar. So I had a good, strong starting point already. I already knew where I was coming from. And the variations in the graph you can see over here are very much due to this extended range I'm going for. Because I'm, like I said, let's get creative. These represent each of the number steps on your control, so like off 1, 2, 3, 4, all the way up to 11 on bass and treble side. So you can see there's a lot there. You can do things with those. You can get scoops and curves and shapes out of those speakers, out of this simulator, sorry, this analog simulator that you can't get out of a real speaker. So there we go, we're ticking a box now. We're saying we can go places that are not possible. And in fact, actually, we're able to create frequency responses a speaker couldn't have. So we could have all the top end of a 6-inch and all the low end of a 15-inch in one simulation. So that's kind of cool. So we do it like, you know. And on the sort of left over here, like the circuit, this squiggle here is one of the inductor circuits. And I'm trying to do this with inductors. So what's an inductor? What's a reactive inductive load? Okay, incredible lot of physics, we don't care, but basically these little coils of copper, because they're actual copper wire wrapped many, many, many times, have really, not exactly unpredictable characteristics, but really interactive characteristics, you know? Their tone actually changes depending whether you place them near a piece of aluminium or steel. Their tone changes depending on how many volts go through them, on the current flow, on so many factors, and that makes them complex to work with. So a lot of people don't like them for that. Plus they're expensive. Fact is that wrapping lots of copper in coils is a very laborious process, so they're relatively expensive and a bit complicated, so everyone steers away from them. That's why in all those designs I showed you, I don't think any of them had an inductor in. No, one had the little transformer. So I had a little transformer. It's a type of inductor. So yeah, this is where we're looking at. And if we look at sort of the rough sketch of my ideas we've got this idea that we'll have those analog controls will let us get this level of lots to no bass, lots to no treble. But more than that, let me change some of the stats around on this. Let me change some stepping at my values. So let's not step the variable controls. Let's step so we're going to step the switched controls instead. So it'll be at the same boost level. I think it'd be quite high, I can't remember. Oh, very high. So here we can see, you know, don't worry about the height. Those are like controls at 11. We can see here the different frequencies. So like at the bottom end, we've got a sort of, we can pick between 70 hertz, 100 hertz, 150 hertz, and 200 hertz. Those are pretty realistic peak frequencies. You know, 100 would be a typical 12-inch, 70 is a 15, more or less, sort of thing. Or in our case, I think I was going to assign those to the number of speakers. But like I say, this is to give you a feel. You turn the controls, you're going to hear how it sounds and think, wow, I can get all these different frequency ranges. And then you can tune the gain on them, as it were. And up here we see different resonance characteristics. For the high end, sort of 3.7, 4.5, 5.5, 6, 6.5, 6.6, up to 8.2, so 8.2 kilohertz. So as we've got this really cool array of 4 low frequency ranges, 5 high frequency ranges, and infinite control of how much of those ranges we're going to bring on board. And we've got all of that before we even begin to sort of consider the other controls. So going back to our design box, we can see that fits with this, and like I said, they come back at each other. I haven't even put in these controls for big magnet or closed back, but I can already imagine how those are going to work now, you know. And the other joy of having inductors is that's actually really hard to drive that circuit. It's really low. I'm not sure it's going to work. I'm going to test it and we're going to see how well it works. Well, it does work because it worked in this, but I mean, I don't know how well it will work till I hear it, because one of the other things with doing this sort of design work is that no matter how much you plan on paper, it's going to sound good. Honestly, it doesn't matter how good you are at this. The moment you plug it in, it's just going to be like a yes/no thing. You either go, wow, oh, there's something there, or you just go, oh, that's not good. You know, a lot of the time you have to make changes back and forward, back and forward. So this is where we're at. We've got a good starting point of this unit. We've got a diagram. Got an idea of where we're going to go with the design, and we've got, you know, all these speakers to look at as examples. We've got other people's circuits where we can see how we can do better than that, and of course we've got the real devices in the real that we're up against to have a look at. And I think I'm very positive about this, very optimistic, you know, and yeah, I hope you guys are too. Basically, I hope you're on board with this and interested. I'm not asking for anything at this stage other than maybe follow the YouTube channel, follow the Kickstarter page. It's not even gone for approval yet. This is really early sketching, and I'll get some prototypes made and I'll record them. and I'll let you guys see what they sound like, you know. And if you want to join onto these mailing lists and things, then I'll let you know. You can be the first to know, and yeah, maybe it's something really cool that'll open up some possibilities for everyone. You know, a different way of recording, of getting your own tone, you know, without needing either a recording studio or being constrained to someone else's perfect digital simulations. You know, hey, it's an idea. So, cheers for listening.